What would happen if you truly gave everything to Deus? Not just your struggles, but your ambitions, fears, and even your deepest desires? Many of us hold back, uncertain of the outcome or afraid of losing control. But the stories in the Bible reveal a stunning truth. Surrender isn't weakness. It's the gateway to peace, purpose, and transformation. In this journey, you'll see how the lives of Joseph, Esther, and even Jonah were completely changed by their trust in God. Are you ready to discover what happens when you let go and let God take the lead? The story of Joseph is a profound example of how complete surrender to Deus can transform even the darkest moments into blessings. Sold into slavery by his brothers and unjustly imprisoned, Joseph never abandoned his faith. Instead, he trusted that God had a greater purpose for his suffering. In Genesis 50, verse 20, he famously declared to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." This unwavering belief turned his trials into triumphs. Joseph's journey from the pit to the palace is a testament to the power of trust and forgiveness. Despite the betrayal, he chose to forgive his brothers, showing that love and mercy can heal even the deepest wounds. Imagine the strength of character it took to embrace those who once sought to destroy him. Joseph's story reminds us that when our hearts are aligned with Deus, no challenge is insurmountable, and his plan will always prevail. This lesson is timeless. How often do we resist surrendering our struggles to God, trying to control outcomes ourselves? Joseph's faith teaches us to let go, trusting that Deus holds the bigger picture. His transformation from a slave to the governor of Egypt is proof that surrender brings not only peace to the soul, but also divine purpose and blessings far beyond human imagination. The story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is a powerful demonstration of resilient faith in the face of extreme adversity. These young men refused to bow to King Nebuchadnezzar's golden statue, fully aware of the fiery furnace awaiting them. In Daniel 3 verses 17 to 18, they declared, "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. But even if he does not, we want you to know, Your Majesty, that we will not serve your gods." Their unwavering commitment inspired awe. Their faith was not based on the assurance of an earthly rescue, but on the trust in Deus's eternal plan. When they were thrown into the furnace, a miraculous sight followed. The king saw 4 men walking in the fire, unharmed, with one appearing like a son of the gods. This moment was a divine testimony to the power and presence of God, showing that his protection transcends human understanding. This story invites reflection. How strong is our faith when tested? In moments of trial, do we trust that God walks with us, even in the flames? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego remind us that faith is not just believing in God's power, but standing firm in his love and purpose, even when the outcome is uncertain. Their testimony challenges us to hold fast to our faith, knowing that Deus's love is unshakable and his peace eternal. The story of Esther is a remarkable testament to how Deus orchestrates events for his greater purpose. As a young Jewish woman chosen to be queen in a foreign land, Esther found herself in a position of influence during a time of great danger for her people. When Haman's plot to annihilate the Jews was revealed, Esther's cousin Mordecai reminded her in Esther 4 verse 14, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" This pivotal moment defined her courage and trust in God. Esther's decision to risk her life by approaching the king without invitation demonstrates her unwavering faith. Knowing the penalty could be death, she fasted, prayed, and then declared, "If I perish, I perish." Esther 4 verse 16. Her boldness, rooted in her love for her people and her reliance on Deus, not only saved an entire nation, but revealed how God's plans often unfold through the bravery of individuals willing to act. This story invites us to reflect on our own lives. How often do we recognize the positions we hold as opportunities to fulfill God's purpose? Esther reminds us that even in the face of fear, trusting in God and stepping forward with faith can lead to extraordinary outcomes. Her story challenges us to ask, what might Deus be calling you to do in this season, for such a time as this? Surrendering control to Deus is one of the most liberating acts a person can experience. Often, we hold tightly to our plans, fearing what might happen if we let go. But the Bible reminds us in Matthew 11, verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." This promise underscores that peace comes not from fighting our battles alone, but from entrusting them to God's capable hands. Consider the story of King Jehoshaphat, who faced overwhelming armies threatening his kingdom. Instead of panicking, he prayed, fasted, and declared, "We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you." 2 Chronicles 20, verse 12. By surrendering the situation to Deus, the battle was won without his army lifting a sword. This victory demonstrates the power of letting go and trusting in God's ability to provide a solution beyond human understanding. How often do we carry unnecessary burdens, trying to control outcomes? When we trust in God, we find the peace our soul longs for. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means placing our worries in the hands of the one who loves us most. By letting go, we open our hearts to his divine guidance, allowing his amour to lead us to a place of true peace and purpose. The story of Jonah is a powerful illustration of how surrendering to Deus brings renewal and purpose. Jonah initially resisted God's call, running in the opposite direction of Nineveh. His disobedience led him into the belly of a great fish, a moment of isolation that forced him to confront his fears and his heart. In Jonah 2, verse 7, he cried out, "When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you." This turning point marked the beginning of his transformation. When Jonah finally submitted to God's will, his life took on a renewed sense of purpose. Preaching to the people of Nineveh wasn't just an act of obedience. It became a testament to God's mercy and the power of repentance. Jonah's message reached hearts, sparking a revival that turned an entire city back to Deus. His story reminds us that even our resistance can be redeemed when we choose to align with God's plan. Jonah's journey challenges us to reflect on our own paths. Are there areas in our lives where we are resisting God's call? Like Jonah, we may find that surrender leads not only to peace, but to a deeper understanding of God's amour and purpose for us. His story invites us to embrace the renewal that comes from trusting in God, knowing that he can turn even our reluctance into a testimony of his grace and pause. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful acts a person can undertake, and the Bible gives us profound examples of its transformative power. Joseph, betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, chose to forgive rather than seek revenge. In Genesis 50, verse 21, he told them, "So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." His act of grace not only healed his family, but also reflected the heart of Deus, who forgives us time and again. The ultimate example of forgiveness comes from Jesus on the cross. Even in his suffering, he prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23, verse 34. This radical love teaches us that forgiveness is not about excusing wrongs, but about releasing the burden of bitterness from our own hearts. It connects us to the divine, aligning our soul with God's eternal peace and amour. Forgiveness may not always be easy, but it is liberating. Have you ever felt the weight of resentment holding you back? By choosing to forgive, we open the door to healing and allow God's love to flow freely through us. The act of forgiving doesn't only change the forgiven, it transforms the one who forgives, offering a glimpse of the peace and joy that only Deus can provide. The power of prayer is woven throughout the Bible, revealing its role as a lifeline between humanity and Deus. Take the story of Hannah, who fervently prayed for a child. In 1 Samuel 1, verse 10, she wept bitterly and poured out her soul to God, asking for a son. Her heartfelt prayer wasn't ignored. God granted her request, and she gave birth to Samuel, who became one of Israel's greatest prophets. This story reminds us that sincere prayer aligns our hearts with God's purpose. Prayer isn't just about asking for what we want. It's about connecting our soul to God's will. Jesus himself modeled this in the Garden of Gethsemane when he prayed, "Not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22, verse 42. Even in moments of anguish, Jesus demonstrated the peace that comes from surrendering to God's plan. Prayer transforms anxiety into peace, turning our worries into opportunities for faith to grow. Have you ever felt your prayers weren't being answered? Hannah's story teaches us to pray persistently and trust in God's timing. When we open our hearts to Him in honest prayer, we experience not only His amour, but also His divine guidance. Through prayer, we discover strength, clarity, and the reassurance that Deus is always listening, ready to respond with what is best for our lives. The story of Israel's return from exile in Babylon is a powerful testament to Deus's faithfulness in restoring what seems lost. After 70 years of captivity, God fulfilled His promise to bring His people back to their homeland. In Jeremiah 29 verses 10 to 11, He declares, "I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." These words became a source of hope and reassurance for a broken nation. The rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls under Nehemiah highlights how restoration requires both faith and action. Nehemiah's prayerful leadership united the people in a shared purpose, overcoming opposition and challenges. Despite the ruins they faced, their determination, guided by God's hand, transformed despair into renewal. This story reminds us that God's promises are not just spiritual but tangible, restoring both our hearts and our surroundings. Have you ever felt that something in your life was beyond repair? The story of Israel's restoration reveals that nothing is too broken for God to heal. His promises bring not only peace to the soul, but also a renewed sense of purpose. When we trust in His timing and align our hearts with His plans, we experience the profound transformation that only Deus can provide. The stories you've heard today aren't just ancient tales. They're living examples of what happens when you fully surrender to Deus. What's holding you back from giving your heart, your fears, and your plans to Him? Are you ready to experience the peace that only comes from trusting in His purpose? Imagine the freedom of releasing control and allowing God's love to guide you. As Joseph, Esther, and Jonah discovered, surrender brings not only transformation, but a deeper connection to the Creator. What step can you take today to align your life with God's will? If this message has inspired you, don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share this video so others can learn and grow. Together, we'll continue uncovering the truths of the Bible and walking the path of faith, love, and peace that Deus has set before us. Let's take the first step toward a life fully surrendered to Him.